Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Robert Kaufman Fabrics, quality fabrics for quilting. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And The Warm Company, inspiring products for creative people. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Carpetras, and with me again is Patrick Lose, who is our special guest for this 12-part series. And today Patrick is going to show us his tips for creating crisp and clean corners when you're binding a quilt. So, Patrick, I can't wait to see this because it's a problem for a lot of us.
I'm not really, I don't consider myself a technique quilter. I don't have a lot of techniques that I've developed myself because I'm more of a designer and it's more of a visual thing to me. But I sort of happened upon a way to do the corners of my bindings sort of accidentally, and it was really working well, and then I started teaching it and people were saying how valuable the tip was. So this is something that I'm asked a lot to teach when I go out and teach. And you know, I don't claim to do great bindings necessarily, so I'm not going to show the entire binding process, but the corners themselves, I do want to show you that and teach you how to do those too. So I'm just going to start like, you know, starting any other binding, but we won't actually do the finishing and ending overlapping or whatever on this one. So now the other thing I do want to say is that I like to start, I have a guide here, you know, for my seam allowance or whatever, and instead of sewing a perfect 1/4 inch, I set it out just a little bit. I use warm and natural batting, and their battings have a scrim and it's a little bit more compact batting. So I don't want to have too much binding to wrap around to the back. So I do use a little bit larger than a 1/4 inch seam when I'm attaching. And everything else is exactly the same as you would normally do your bindings, but when you get to the corner, what I do here is a little bit different. Okay, so as I approach the corner, I'm going to want to stop the needle the same distance from this raw edge as my seam allowance.
Right.
So it's a little bit more,
more
exactly.
than a 1/4 of an inch.
A little bit more than a 1/4 of an inch. And I want to stop in the needle down position. I'm going to move my guide here. And I'm going to pivot this so that I can stitch off through the corner at a or at a 45-degree angle through the corner. And don't backstitch. That's really important.
Okay.
Makes it a lot easier. Then, you know how you normally treat your mitered corners. You're going to fold this stitching off at that 45-degree angle. That makes the perfect foundation for folding your corner back up. Okay, so we're going to do that and kind of finger crease it, and then fold it back down, just like we always do on any other binding. I forgot to put my guide back in place, so I want to do that. Okay. And we'll just start through that corner.
And again, no pins.
Yeah, no pins.
Even on a large project, you wouldn't pin your binding down?
No. You know, because you're working, you know, just in small sections. And to me, the pins are in the way. I have to stop and pull them out or break them, or break the needle.
No, please don't do that.
Yeah, and there's just, I can be accurate enough without the pins, I guess. Okay, so again, I'm going to stop, needle down, pivot, 45-degree angle through the corner. And I cut my thread. Put my guide back in place.
Now, obviously, you've done this a lot, and so you're able to eyeball that really accurately.
Yeah.
But do you have any tips for people who have not used this technique before to make sure that they are getting it right, you know,
if
right width and
if you're looking at this seam allowance as you're stopping, you know, coming up to a stop, you can kind of see if it's equidistant, you know, from the angle, from the corner. And
so
honestly,
just learn to trust your eyes.
Exactly. Learn to trust your eye. It's a lot easier to do without having to measure or anything like that. And it's not, you know, it's not rocket science. It's not, doesn't have to be super accurate. Well,
there's some people who would not agree with that.
We have our smoke and mirrors. And
Oh, the binding can hide a multitude of sins.
That's right. That's exactly. And this is what's so great about these corners is I have students that have told me now that they'll enter their quilts into competitions because they feel more confident about their binding. Binding corners are a big part of judging in quilt competitions.
Those little touches,
That's
those
right.
little details can really make it or break it.
That's right.
So.
You wouldn't want to come down to losing a competition because of your corners on your binding.
Well, a competition, and also just for a utilitarian quilt
yeah.
too. If your corners are really bulky, it can, you know, you just want something that's nice and soft and comfy and cozy. So.
I think you're going to agree, and I see that I didn't quite trim this right, but it's okay. I'm going to back up a couple of stitches. You'll see that the corners are nice and crisp and at a right angle, and that's so much better than curved, bumpy corners. I have a hard time looking at those.
You've gotten so used to how your corners look.
Yeah, well, and you know, a binding really, it's a frame. It's, you know, you've got a piece of artwork that you're framing. It's not just to finish off the raw edge. It's not completely utilitarian. So you want it to look like a part of the artwork.
So you're not back stitching on that diagonal, but I noticed
No.
that when you are starting your new line of stitching, you are back stitching.
I do, and you know, I don't know how necessary that is. It's just a habit. I started out sewing in garment sewing, and you backstitched everything, or else you might have a seam rip out on a shirt or a pair of pants. Yeah.
That's no good.
Okay, and rather than finish this, because I want to get to showing the corners, I'm just going to cut off these loose ends. We don't need those, and I'm not actually going, this is not a work of art that needs to be finished. So.
It's a very nice little sample.
Okay, so right off the bat, you're going to learn why we don't backstitch.
Okay.
I'm going to, let's find this corner actually. Okay. I'm going to clip these just so you can get a good view of what I'm going to do here. Where, if you peel, and this is tight to see, so if you peel the binding away from the quilt, you can see where I stitched that it's already starting to kind of pull out because we didn't backstitch, and that's good because we need to rip that out. We're going to take that, just, you know, with the tip of my scissors, I can pull out the remainder of the stitches there. Because I want to expose, if I take the point of my scissors and reach right in there, in front of that, it's so hard to see this, but in front of that wedge there that was created, and I'm going to clip to the seam allowance, okay?
Yes.
Then if you peel that back, you can see that wedge better.
Okay.
Okay, now just, and I've already got the stitches out. Then pull the quilt back, and you've got these 2 layers of fabric that serve no purpose at all. It's just a lump. So you cut that out.
Okay.
So that takes 2 layers of fabric out of your corner. Then when you turn this corner, and fold your binding to the back, it makes a perfect mitered corner. But now feel the thickness of that corner. It's no thicker than the rest of the binding on the quilt. So it does make a big difference. Let me show that again.
So rather than cutting maybe, you know, across.
No, that I was going to say don't do that.
Don't do
Definitely
that.
don't do that. So this is something that I say a lot too, and I'm glad you brought that up because having taught a lot of garment sewers different techniques, when you're sewing a garment, say a cuff on, or a collar on a shirt, and you get to this corner, before you can turn that, you have to cut the corner off and grade that seam. You can't do that in quilting. That corner is the foundation for your perfect square binding corner. So let me show you one more here before we're out of time. I'm just going to take the point of the scissors in front of that wedge that was stitched, clip to the seam allowance. That will allow you to lift the binding up and expose that triangular wedge there. Just kind of pick those stitches out to free that wedge up. Open it up. You've got the 2 layers of fabric there, and just cut them off.
That's the culprit that gets us those bulky corners.
That's right.
Just get those out of the way.
And if I could step over to the iron, I can show you We won't do this with every corner. Iron the binding away from the quilt. And that's just to make sure that there's no, lumps of fabric, within the seam. And iron it on both sides of the corner. And this helps to form the corner then. So what I'm going to do is just turn the binding to the back. And as I lay this down, you can see that that has created a 45-degree angle this way and this way. And taking that angle to the back means we've got another 45-degree angle there.
Just falls right into place.
Right. And then, of course, it's a lot easier if you press it into place, force it into submission.
So you still use the iron a lot, even up to this late stage of making a quilt?
Oh yeah, I do. I think it makes, and that may come from the fact that I was a garment sewer first. You really have to open your seams up and make sure that they're clean and neat.
Well, this is great. It's a great tip. Thank you so much, Patrick.
I hope you can use it.
I plan to.
Good.
I plan to. I hope you do too. And if you wanted to view any other of our episodes, please visit quiltersnewsletter.com. We will see you next time. Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Robert Kaufman Fabrics, quality fabrics for quilting. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And The Warm Company, inspiring products for creative people.